The flickering torchlight danced across the rough-hewn stones of the path, each step a small victory against the encroaching darkness. Diana. Her name was a whispered prayer on my lips, a fragile shield against the gnawing fear that had taken root in my chest since the sun dipped below the horizon. 3 days. 3 sunrises and sunsets without the sound of her laughter echoing through our small home nestled by the olive grove. The whispers started in the village. Strange music drifted from the hills, bonfires that painted the night sky in hues of feverish red and gold. They spoke of the followers of Bacchus, their revelries growing wilder with each passing moon. Foolishness, I thought. Young men and women seeking fleeting pleasures. My Diana would never. But the knot in my stomach tightened with every mile I walked. Every rustle in the undergrowth that wasn't her small hand reaching for mine. The path began to slope upwards, the air growing thick with the scent of pine and something else. Something heady and sweet, like overripe fruit and spilled wine. Then I heard it. Not the gentle strumming of a lyre or the rhythmic clap of hands I associated with village celebrations. This was a primal pulse, a throbbing drumbeat that resonated deep within my bones, shaking the very ground beneath my feet. It was a call, both terrifying and strangely alluring. Rounding a bend, the sight that unfolded before me stole the breath from my lungs. The clearing blazed with a dozen fires, their lights casting long, distorted shadows that writhed and swayed with the frenzied movements of the crowd. Men and women, their faces smeared with wine and berry juice, their hair tangled with vines, danced with wild abandon I had never witnessed. They shrieked and laughed, their voices blending with the bleating of pipes and the crashing of cymbals into a cacophony that assaulted my senses. Torches were held aloft, casting their erratic glow on figures draped in animal skins, their eyes wide and glazed. Some clutched brimming goblets, others writhed on the ground in ecstatic fits. The air was thick with the smell of roasting meat, incense, and the cloying sweetness of wine spilled in rivers across the earth. This was no mere celebration. This was madness. And then amidst the swirling chaos I saw a flash of color. The pale green of the tunic Diana had worn that morning. My breath hitched. A figure with hair the color of spun moonlight was being lifted onto the shoulders of 2 men. A garland of ivy adorned her head. She was laughing. Her face flushed, her eyes different, empty, yet filled with strange, unsettling joy. "Diana!" My voice was a strangled cry, swallowed by the roar of the Bacchanalia. I stumbled forward, pushing through the throng of bodies, desperate to reach her, to pull her away from this terrifying spectacle. But the crowd was a living, breathing entity pulling me in, its energy a palpable force that threatened to consume me. "Diana!" I cried again, my voice cracking with desperation. Her head turned, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, and for a fleeting moment her eyes met mine. But there was no recognition in their depths, no spark of that sweet, innocent girl I knew. Only a vacant, intoxicating bliss. A wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't my Diana. This was something else entirely, and as the drums beat on, their rhythm echoing the frantic pounding of my own heart, a chilling realization dawned within me. I had found my daughter. But had I already lost her?
I'm Brandon.
And I'm Courtney, and welcome to the Time Travelers Club. Today we're plunging into cult practices and beliefs of the followers of Dionysus, including the intoxicating world of the Bacchanalia, a Roman festival dedicated to the god of wine, revelry, and transformation. This wasn't just a party. It was a phenomenon that swept through the ancient Italy, sparking both fervent devotion and intense fear, ultimately leading to a dramatic clash with Roman authority.
So it's time, guys. Let's talk about sex, baby. That's right. It's the infamous orgies, or orgeia. The term orgies, in relation to Dionysian mystery cults, often conjures images of wild, unrestrained sexual activity. But the historical and scholarly understanding is more nuanced. While sensuality, fertility, and liberation were indeed aspects of Dionysian worship, the orgia, or orgion, plural, I feel like it's always going to be plural. You can't, right?
Like,
is it
I
really?
mean, that's kind of the point of an orgy. It's multiple, a multitude.
Well, maybe it's just like you're having multiple orgies,
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe they got a lot going on.
I mean, possibly.
That's okay. No judging. But this primarily refers to secret, ecstatic, religious rites aimed at achieving a union with the divine, rather than simply being sex parties. They did have those. Let's not get that twisted. They just didn't call them orgies. Those were sex parties.
Yes, and it's the difference between trying to have a relationship with the divine versus just having a relationship with John down the road.
I mean, and not even a relationship, let's be real.
No, just a good time.
Yeah.
We'll put it as a good time.
In ancient Greek, orgeia were a sacred term for ceremonies or secret rites of worship for various deities, including Demeter and Persephone in the Eleusinian mysteries, and Cybele, as well as Dionysus. The focus was on the mystery element, meaning participation and knowledge of the rituals were reserved for initiates and kept secret from outsiders. Dionysus was the god of wine, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, fertility, and theater. His cults aimed to induce a state of ecstasis, meaning, as we discussed before, standing outside oneself, or enthusiasmos, or being filled with the god spirit. This was achieved through, of course, drinking wine, as Dionysus' gift was central to these rites.
As we have covered before, participants, particularly women known as the maenads, would engage in wild, uninhibited dance to drums and pipes, often in natural settings like mountains. Masks could facilitate the shedding of inhibitions and the adoption of a transformed identity. We still use this today in magical practices all over the world. So this has not changed.
And it makes sense. Dionysus, it was used for theater, too, for the same reason.
Exactly.
It's like just different methods, sort of. You got the masks, and it's just to change who you are. You are no longer you, which sometimes holds you back. You are allowed to take on a new persona, or lack of one, if need be.
Absolutely. Sometimes we need a Nemo.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just so you're aware, Nemo means no one. Literally nothing. However, these secret rites often took place in... Okay, I already read that. I did not. Never mind. However, these secret rites often took place in a wild, natural environment, symbolizing a return to a primal state and a shedding of civilizing constraints. This contrasts sharply to the festivals in cities like Athens, which we talked about last time.
Right, and that's, we had talked about this, and that's why I just said, same thing for the theater. When you're taking on a role, you may be some actor, which was pretty low on the social ladder back then.
Very much so.
But, you, in that moment, if you are a king, you are a king, and you are being viewed as that in that moment. Mm-hmm. You are shedding your normal identity for this new one, and vice versa, same thing with these mysteries.
Absolutely. So, however, the Dionysian mysteries didn't spring forth fully formed. Their roots are believed to lie in more ancient, possibly Thracian or Phrygian, fertility cults that spread throughout the Mediterranean region. The worship of Dionysus himself seems to have been a relatively late rival to the Olympian pantheon, perhaps explaining the passionate and sometimes unruly nature of his rites, which stood in contrast to the more formalized worship of other gods. So it was getting back to the wild, and I think these things have to go through cycles because there is a point of too civilized, too much etiquette, too much restriction.
Oh, that's why Dionysus is there, baby. And to be fair, we've talked about this before, too. there's also, it could be the other way around where they're invoking something much older from before. I think that maybe there's a happy medium here where yes, Dionysus existed in that context, lost something along the way, and therefore they had to look to other cultures to be re-inspired. People that they viewed as almost like noble savage. You'll see that a lot. I mean, it's a very modern term and with a specific meaning for us. But this idea of someone who was savage, it's like an innocence. Rome did it too. It's like, oh, these people, they're so noble, so great, but so savage, and we used to be like that. Let's take them over and completely ruin them.
Let's civilize them. Oh, these poor things. They need us.
Well, it's not even that. It's like, they're like, we admire you for these traits we used to have. Let's ruin that. Even though we just said we admired it. Like, what?
People ruin everything.
Right. That's like, my God. Anyway.
So, initially the cult was closely tied to the cultivation of the grapevine and the transformative power of the wine. The life cycle of the vine, its death in the winter and rebirth in the spring, was seen as embodying the essence of the god himself. The intoxicating effects of wine were not merely seen as social lubricant, but as a means to break down inhibitions. Lubricant.
Lubricant. Orgies.
Damn it!
I'm 11. As my other favorite podcasts like to say.
But they were seen as a means to break down inhibitions, dissolve the ego, and achieve a state of enthusiasmos, being filled with the god.
That's how you say that. I butchered that.
It's okay.
Enthusiasm. Oh, that's a weird.
Enthusiasmos. Yeah. It's, honestly, I kind of like it.
It's interesting because I feel like when we say enthusiasm now, we don't think of a god taking over our body.
No, and the thing is, this is why I love etymology.
Yeah.
I love seeing where words come from specifically for this.
That's
because we do lose meaning throughout the centuries. That is a whole tangent for another time.
Yeah, but it's funny because when we think ecstasy, ekstasos, like outer body, like euphoria kind of experience, that's still aligned, that's kosher. But this idea of enthusiasm versus oh my God, enthusiasmos, kind of have, I mean, I guess there's similarities, but they feel very different.
It feels very different because
if
the one that we use it, are you filled with enthusiasm? That's shallow. It's shallow versus the depth that enthusiasmos
But
has.
interesting that you said, are you filled with enthusiasm? Are you then? Oh, look at that.
Gotcha. So over time, the Dionysian cult evolved and absorbed elements from other mystery religions, such as the Orphic mysteries, and even syncretized with deities in other regions, like the Egyptian Osiris. This fluidity and adaptability were key to its widespread appeal. So, initially, the cult was closely tied to the cultivation of the grapevine and the transformative power of wine. The life cycle of the vine, its death in the winter, rebirth in the spring.
Yep. You're rereading it, babes. I got you.
Because it went two ways. Okay. Beautiful.
That's okay. So, my turn. So, Dionysus was also undeniably associated with fertility and sexuality. Phallic processions, aka the penis parades, the infamous penis parades, featuring large representations of the phallus, were part of some Dionysian festivals, such as Roman Liberalia. This was linked to agricultural fertility and the renewal of life. Sowing your seed, you might say.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. Unlike the other religious cults in Greece and later Rome, his cult specifically appealed to marginalized groups such as women, slaves, and non-citizens, as it offered a temporary inversion of social roles and release from social norms, like we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Right.
So a king could become a pauper, and a pauper could become a king.
Correct. This included liberation from inhibitions, because you're not bound to your social role, which could certainly encompass sexual expression. Why am I stumbling?
It's okay.
It's okay.
We do that.
It's all right. While sensuality and the breaking of taboos were present, direct evidence of widespread, unrestrained sexual orgies, as we might define them today, is debated among scholars. Roman accounts, particularly that among Livy, regarding the Bacchanalia describe rampant sexual promiscuity and criminal activity. Something you guys are going to realize about the Romans, though, they had a stick up their butt. Most of them did. The ones talking about this did not have a reason to talk about this positively. So they were often exaggerated and biased. They were written during a time when Roman Senate was actively suppressing the cult due to perceived threats to public order. We see this today, guys. Anyone who talks about social change or trying to do beneficial things for your community through the government are communists. Or
propaganda started here. It is a very, very powerful thing, and it is still used today.
Yeah, it's like it's just showing you, and I think it's always been there, but it's like as we were able to write more, and like as we get closer to some, time-wise to something, like there's just more of those records, and we can see it a little bit more apparently.
Well, yes, and I mean, rumor, speculation, gossip, all of that has always been a thing, and that really is what propaganda is.
Yeah.
Truly.
So the truth of it. Some modern interpretations of Dionysian worship do incorporate sensuality and sexual energy, okay, as a means of connecting with the divine and experiencing ecstasy, seeing it as a transformative and liberal experience, or liberating experience. In essence, while the Dionysian mysteries involved intense ecstatic rituals that challenge societal norms and embrace themes of fertility and freedom, the popular image of them as purely sexual orgies is most definitely an oversimplification, influenced by later, often hostile accounts. This primary goal was a profound, transformative, spiritual experience of the union with the God. And I'm sure there was like this bonding between souls and people too, like, right? We shared an experience, together. Yeah. And yeah, that's something that you don't share with other people.
No, you don't.
Right.
So being at a Dionysian mystery cult ritual would have been an overwhelming, transformative, and deeply sensory experience, very different from typical religious practices of the time. While specific rituals varied across regions and time periods, and our understanding is based on fragmented accounts and archaeological evidence, here is a reconstruction of what it might have been like. The atmosphere would be charged with anticipation. There were mysteries, meaning that they were secret rites for initiates. The journey to a ritual site, often a remote mountain or cave, would itself be part of the experience, leaving behind the ordinary world and its constraints. There would have been a heavy sensory immersion at these. Drums, timpana, pipes, auloi, and other instruments would create a hypnotic, driving rhythm. Mm-hmm. The air would vibrate with the collective shouts of Ioi, Dionysus' name, ecstatic cries and singing that built to a crescendo. Torches would flicker and sway in the darkness, casting dancing shadows. So even the air around you, the environment around you was dancing with you.
And I'm reading that oi, and I'm thinking, oi! And I can't.
Stop.
I can't help but point that out, guys.
Damn it.
So every time you do that, you're praising his name. Praise Dionysus.
Oh my god.
Continue.
So, participants might wear masks, further blurring identities and inviting a sense of transformation. In some accounts, fawn skins and ivy wreaths were worn, connecting them to the wild nature of the god. The scent of wine would be pervasive, along with possibly incense, pine needles, or the earthy smells of the natural environment. Wine often mixed with other substance. Some scholars suggest psychoactive herbs like poppy would be consumed, leading to altered states of consciousness and disinhibition. This played a crucial role in loosening inhibitions and fostering a state of communion with the god. There's also the controversial omophagia, eating of raw meat, which would have been a visceral, powerful act of communion, symbolizing the tearing apart and rebirth of the god. The communal dancing would involve physical exertion, the brushing of bodies, and perhaps even ecstatic movements like head tossing and wild gesticulations. The raw earth or mountain paths beneath bare feet would ground the experience in nature. So it would be the wild meeting the natural. And I say wild meaning like, I almost want to call it rabid.
Mm-hmm.
The rabid aspect of the person, the unrestrained, honestly, it invites images of Woodstock to me.
For me, gesticulations reminds me of gyrating pelvises. So I feel like it was one hell of a party.
I mean,
You just got grinding. All the stuff they told you in high school that you couldn't do.
Leave room for Jesus.
Gotta have a space between you two. There were no spaces here.
No spaces.
Every nook and cranny.
Jesus Christ!
Oi! Dionysus. For many of the rituals, offered a profound sense of liberation. Social inhibitions would be shed, allowing for a temporary escape from those societal norms and expectations. This would be incredibly cathartic, releasing pent-up emotions and anxieties. Sounds like good therapy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Then these people needed it.
Oh, absolutely.
Those Romans. That stick was firmly up there. The Dionysus would not approve.
No.
Not this time. The Dionysian mysteries offered a unique space for individuals marginalized by mainstream Greek and Roman societies, including, as we said before, women, slaves, and non-citizens. So anyone who's foreign, it was a big thing in Athens. Dionysus, one of the reasons it was so heavily accepted there was even the Athenians recognized that they had a large immigrant population.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, it's funny enough, during a lot of these festivals, they would force the immigrant population to dress up a certain way for these festivals.
Ugh.
I mean, part of me is like, oh. But, I mean, at least they're...
I mean, they're trying to get them included, but
yeah.
the inclusion is exclusionary at the same time because of the dress.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Can't be any worse, though, than Julius Caesar's thigh-high red boots, so, I mean, whatever. So, but the ecstatic rituals provide a temporary release from social constraints and hierarchies, allowing for a sense of freedom and equality within these cultural communities. So, again, it's funny because they're kind of othering these out, like these immigrants and stuff, but at the same time, it's their way of saying, you are one of us for this week.
For right now, we
now.
recognize you.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't know. But it offered a more personal and emotionally intense form of religious experience compared to traditional Olympian cult. The promise of direct communion with the divine and a better afterlife provided solace and meaning to its adherents. The cult's embrace of the wild, the ecstatic, and those on the fringes of society challenged the established norms and boundaries of the Greek and later Roman polis. The temporary inversion of social roles during these rituals can be seen as both a release and tension and subtle critique of societal structures. That's key. It may sound like we're repeating ourselves a little bit then, now that we're getting to some of that point. Yes, it was a release. Yes, you were breaking your bonds. But that also serves as a critique if you're not happy with your station, right?
If you're not happy with where you're at, why are you having to release pressure? Why are you having to go and do something so outside of society?
And if there was no audience. And yet, how many, didn't we just list the audience here?
Big one.
Right. So, and they're all in the same place together. Bonding, shall we say.
With masks.
With masks.
Kinky.
The divine, I feel like with all that going on, sometimes the mask fell off, just saying.
Probably. Senator, how are you here?
Senator wife.
Oh, shit.
Crap, is that my slave?
Oh, God.
Is that my slave with my husband? Sure is, madam. The concepts of divine madness, the nature of illusion and reality, and the exploration of altered states of consciousness, central to the Dionysian experience, found their way into Greek philosophical thought, including thinkers like Plato. Some scholars suggest possible influences of the Dionysian mysteries on later religious movements, including Gnosticism and early Christianity, particularly in the themes of death, rebirth, and spiritual communion.
Love Gnosticism. Definitely something I want to deep dive into. So as we stated earlier, the central aim was to achieve ecstasis, literally standing outside of oneself, a state of altered consciousness where one transcended their ordinary self. This was often described as enthusiasmos, being filled with the god spirit. In this state, participants might feel possessed by Dionysus, experiencing a merging with the divine. The intense, repetitive movements, the wine, and the collective energy could lead to a dissolution of individual identity. You stop that.
There's certain repetitive movements that helps.
He was gesticulating.
It's got a good rhythm. What can I say?
This loss of self was not seen as a negative, but a path to a deeper, more primal connection. You have to think everything, all the rules of society, everything feels so shallow, just like we were talking about with enthusiasmos. It feels so shallow that you are searching for depth. You can no longer take the drip drop of connection that is given to you by the traditional Olympian temples, because that has been so regulated and so over regulated.
Right. You have like your 1 minute you're dancing with your husband or boyfriend or whatever, but you have to have like that, 5 finger spaces between each other. And now you are balls deep with your slave Narcissus.
Yep.
And like it's a much deeper connection, shall we say, I mean, like
So the rituals often echoed themes of death and rebirth, reflecting the cyclical nature of Dionysus and offering a sense of renewal. Being in wild natural settings reinforced a connection to untamed nature, a shedding of the civilized persona to embrace instinctual urges. While the goal was spiritual transformation, the intense nature of these rituals could also lead to extreme behavior. Accounts like Euripides' Bacchae depict violent acts. Though these are literary and potentially exaggerated, it's important to remember that such extreme expressions might have been rare or confined to specific, highly charged moments rather than the norm for every initiate.
Oh yeah, like if your town's ripping people apart every time this happens, you're not going to have a town, guys.
No. And you have to figure where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
So these kinds of things don't just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah, you can't always have like the king torn apart by their mom like that. Just like every time there was a ritual, and these are going on even if they were going on annually, man, you're gonna run out of people real quick.
You absolutely would. So the orgies often associated with Dionysus were primarily about the ecstatic communal ritual, the orgeia, and the symbolic breaking of boundaries, rather than simply being a free-for-all sexual activity. While sensuality and fertility were certainly present, the focus was on transcending the mundane. In essence, being a Dionysian mystery cult ritual, or being at a Dionysian mystery cult ritual, would have been an immersive, visceral, and emotionally charged experience designed to shatter the boundaries of ordinary consciousness and facilitate a direct, ecstatic encounter with the divine. It was a journey into the wild, untamed aspects of both nature and the human psyche, ultimately aiming for liberation, transformation, and a profound sense of communion.
But it wasn't just all orgies and drugs, guys. There were many other, I don't know if I would say family-friendly, but, not orgy-related activities you could participate in. One example is the mountain processions called Thiasoi. Here, groups of devotees, often led by women, known as Maenads, or playing the role of Maenads, or Bacchanates, as they would be known later, would gather and process into the wild, mountainous regions. Perhaps one of the most immediate images that comes to mind involves the manic dancing of the Maenads. These, of course, are based off the real-life dances performed during these rituals by both religious leaders and their followers. Rhythmic and often wild dancing was a crucial element believed to lead to those altered states of consciousness. spinning, shouting, and other trance and hip gyrating and other trance-inducing techniques. And now I've got a real bad image of my head with that. You know, you have to realize they're probably doing this in the nude, and if they're gyrating, there's some other hypnotic action going on.
Helicopter.
I'm just thinking like tick tock, clap, clap, and you're like a helicopter. Oh my god, we're not cutting this.
No, we're not.
That's also spinning, I suppose. Anyway, these techniques were employed. The association of Dionysus with theater is well known. Masks were used in rituals, allowing participants to take on different identities, blurring the lines between human and the divine. Then there were the secret rites themselves that differentiated all this from the more public rituals and worship. The Dionysian mysteries involved initiation rituals that promised secret knowledge and a blessed afterlife. These rites were often held in a private setting and involved symbolic acts of purification and sometimes dramatic reenactments of Dionysus' myths. I'm, again, just imagining the tearing people apart scene. I kind of want to know how they did that.
A puppet, more likely. Or a straw man.
Or a local senator.
That too.
Oh, maybe we need to bring that back. The myths surrounding Dionysus, his birth, death, and resurrection were central to the cult. Initiates may have ritually reenacted or symbolically participated in these myths, fostering a sense of identification with the suffering and triumph of the god, blurring the lines between human and divine. Again.
Yes, always. And that's the thing with Dionysus, is he is trying to invoke the divinity of the flesh. Mm-hmm. And I think that's
and otherwise beautiful. Too, going beyond your flesh too.
So, yeah, it is. It's like the divine is in you, the divine is around you, the divine is everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is
that makes it very personal too.
Yeah.
It's not like you're talking to a statue or something like a Disney movie. It's like, no, like it's just such an intimate experience. And I guess you could really see where like later Christian and like people were possibly influenced by this same relationship, right?
Absolutely. So due to the secretive nature of the mystery cults, precise details of the Dionysian mysteries remains elusive. Initiates were bound by oaths of silence, and what we know comes from fragmented literary accounts, artistic depictions, and some archaeological findings, often viewed through the lens of those outside of the cult who were sometimes critical or fearful of its practices. However, we can piece together some of it. For example, baskets, mirrors, and other symbolic items were used in rituals, though their specific meanings within the mysteries are largely lost to time. Okay, so baskets. What do baskets do? They hold shit.
Right.
Do we need to say more? Baskets hold shit, but also it could be symbolic of a ship. He does a lot of traveling. He does a lot of getting from column A to column B, or point A to point B.
You need baskets too. Like, think about the concept of like grape gathering.
Exactly.
It's still even today in France, like you'll see like, people who have like these big vineyards, right? And I'm sure there's some modern mechanization involved, but they are waiting till the right to the point where they're going to go bad if they stay on that vine a minute longer. Mm-hmm. They're so soft, and you have to be delicate. It's not a process you can really autonomize
or make it by hand.
And therefore you put them gently in baskets, and you carry those baskets. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
And then mirrors. Again, I'm a spiritual practitioner. Mirrors. You are literally finding the divine in yourself. Or you are gathering light, because this is a time before electricity. You're reflecting light onto a wall. You are literally creating images on something else. Or you are looking at your own image and seeing the God within you.
Well, you also have, in a lot of cultures, mirrors are spiritual to begin with, because they're like this. So. Well, they're reflection in general, right? In a lot of Celtic, what we know about Celtic religions, speaking very, very broadly, water and reflection tends to be this portal to another world. And Shinto, one of the three art, like the three sacred objects, still supposedly held by the imperial family today. One of them was a mirror. Like it's like this, and like you see that in a lot of like myth making in Japanese like folklore and stuff too. Like it's a haunted object sometimes. It's a spiritual object. It's a tool. It's something, right? And
and it's just for me because of the nature of the mystery cults and what they are trying to achieve. It's not as wild as like, we don't know what they would use a mirror for. What are you gonna use? What do you use a mirror for?
Well, and the thing is mirrors now versus mirrors then.
Those are very different.
Well, like in the care. So like in Japan, for example, I know this particular like thing. It essentially you are when you have like a bronze mirror, right? Like you have to hand polish it, and it's very intimate and like rhythmic, and like it's a lot of effort, right? And you have to keep looking at yourself, and like the more effort you put into it, the more care and the more you take care of it, the clearer the image of yourself is. Exactly.
And like just kind of let that sink in for a moment, because that is so profound. You are spending the time, you are doing the polishing, and they didn't necessarily have the type of mirrors that we have today, or even like mirrors that they had back in like 1700s where they put like silver on the back of glass to create that mirror. They didn't have that.
No. And like
it was polished metal.
And does anyone else have that song from Mulan in their head right now?
A little bit.
It's
yes.
A little bit. We need to let go of the mirror.
It's there. A little bit.
My reflection. Don't sue us, Disney.
No, don't sue us. It's fine. But these things are not necessarily like the biggest mysteries, and that honestly, it drives me nuts. Yes, the specifics are lost to time because it is a mystery cult. It wasn't necessarily written down, but we can extrapolate information.
Yeah,
we can absolutely extrapolate information.
Though I am a little curious, because it's like, what did the mirror represent? So in the sense, like, is it just like a reflection of oneself? Is it like where I'm talking about where it's like real intimate, and like the more you clean it and the more it's like, oh, a reflection of yourself? Yeah. Or is it like you think you're looking into it like Alice in Wonderland style into another world?
Well, you also have to figure that these people did not see their reflections very often, because mirrors were definitely not an everyday thing.
Also, like if you're on drugs, maybe it's something else.
Quite possibly. It could be like there's many practices of medium work where you're looking in mirrors, you're putting yourself in a trance. That is still used today. Promise you. It's not that wild. It's not that weird. So, the act of feasting and ritual consumption of wine were, of course, important, symbolizing the presence and the gifts of Dionysus. Another important aspect were the sacrifices. Animals, particularly bulls and goats, were commonly sacrificed to Dionysus. These animals were often seen as embodying aspects of the god, which I'm going to pull, like, Jesus card again.
Well, we talked about the bull too, and like when we were talking about maybe the connection to the Minoans, things like that. I mean, and then again, Daddy Zeus took on the form of a bull to get with a lady.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like the form of the bull itself. It is more so they were sacrificed because they embodied the god.
Yeah, but like also like bulls and cows and things, they're an animal that you have to be prosperous, to own one, but like to maintain it, you have to, like if you have a bad drought, especially back then, it's not like you have like reserves of like food you can go get at Tractor Supply or something. I don't know where you farmers get your excess. I'm just saying, like, but like it's like a symbol. Like if you're able to have this very healthy, large, powerful animal, then like that's a sign of your, not only your wealth, but the area's prosperity and fertility too.
Absolutely.
So praise Dionysus.
So, but these were not ordinary sacrifices. I'm sure you're imagining altar, robes, and a knife. Something clean and deliberate. But a particularly striking and controversial practice associated with the more ecstatic forms of the cult was sparagmos, the tearing apart, and homophagia, eating raw flesh. In a frenzied religious state, the Maenads were said to tear apart live animals with their bare hands and consume the raw flesh. This ritual was likely symbolic, representing the dismemberment and rebirth of Dionysus in myth and aimed at achieving a powerful communion with the god's raw, untamed essence.
So this was probably not family-friendly activity.
Definitely not.
Though I do have the image of now these like rabid children tearing into like a cow.
Oh, so we're going like Lord of the Flies?
Yeah. No, I don't know. I feel like that's still too tame. I'm just
It
thinking,
might be
like,
a little bit.
I'm just thinking like, you know, like these kids with their little ivy like wreaths and their little togas, and they're so cute, and all of a sudden they're just like manically devouring, and you come around the corner and they just pop up above the carcass, and they're like,
Oh, Jesus.
It's just nightmare fueled. I love it.
A little bit.
Make a painting of that, guys.
Ooh. So as for libations, wine, milk, and honey were common liquid offerings poured out to the god, and other offerings could include incense, fruits, especially grapes and figs, ivy, and pine. Mm-hmm. It's important to note that the more extreme practices like sparagmos and omophagia are primarily known through ancient literature, such as Euripides' play The Bacchae, which may have exaggerated these elements for dramatic effect or to critique the cult. The extent to which these practices were widespread or literal remains a subject of scholarly debate.
Yeah.
The sacrifices and practices within the cult of Dionysus were ultimately about transcending the ordinary, achieving a direct experience of the divine, and connecting with the life-giving and untamed forces of nature embodied by the god of wine, ecstasy, and liberation.
Yeah, it's nice. It's not just all sex parties, guys.
No, it's not all sex parties, and it had so much more in it.
And don't get me wrong, the sex parties were great, I'm sure, but like there was more to it. So now we're going to move on to Bacchanalia, specifically. So, which is, Bacchanalia existed, it probably would have been known as such in Greece, right? People have this like misconception that Bacchus and Bacchanalia are like a Roman thing. Mm-hmm. They were just taking that particular aspect of Dionysus, and that's just kind of what they called it. But in this context, when we say Bacchus and Bacchanalia now, we are speaking more from the Roman perspective, so that we're not getting it twisted. So at its heart, the Bacchanalia honored Bacchus, the quote-unquote Roman counterpart of the Greek god Dionysus. Again, technically he had both names in Greece, but both deities embodied the potent forces of nature, the intoxicating power of the vine, the cycle of fertility, the liberating influence of the ecstatic dance, and theatrical expression. Dionysian mysteries in Greece provide the foundation for the Bacchanalia, initially appearing as localized and perhaps more controlled celebrations, often associated with female worshippers known as Bacchanettes, or Maenads again, figures we often imagine in a state of wild and divine frenzy. So again, like pretty much they were just taking those practices, and they were smaller scale because again, like the Dionysian mysteries we have to think are like more like Athens, so you have like a larger city-state, and like members within that society are participating, whereas this is a little bit more rural at this point, you know, because in Rome, yes, Bacchus, Dionysus was actually a foreign imported god, you know, so it depends on the part of Italy you're in. There were Greek areas that were colonized, but I digress. The early forms of Bacchanalia seem to have been relatively private affairs, possibly involving specific families or small communities. Again, like I was talking about, maybe those Greek colonies or people with a Greek background, right? Trying to maintain that connection to the motherland. Historical accounts suggest that women held a prominent role in these initial rituals, which is kind of nice. It's refreshing. However, as the cult of Bacchus spread and gained popularity through the Italian peninsula, the nature of Bacchanalia underwent a significant transformation. It evolved from these smaller, perhaps a little more solemn gatherings into large-scale, multi-day events characterized by unbridled revelry. Kind of like, you know, Coachella.
Oh my gosh, that honestly is a fantastic...
Or Burning Man.
Burning Man?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's like one of those things like... I don't want to say Burning Man. That's probably the closer one, because it's like... You know, everyone knows like about Burning Man, and everyone has this idea of what Burning Man is in their head, and you know, and it's wild, raucous nonsense. But like, it started as a much smaller thing before that, you know, and like it was just like kind of like mini Woodstocks almost,
pretty much.
And then it became this huge thing. So, But the Bacchanalia was more than just eating and drinking. Central to the rites were ecstatic dances, believed to, again, facilitate direct connection with the divine. And as wine flowed and the music intensified, inhibitions would dissolve. Participants would lose themselves in the frenzied movements, their bodies becoming instruments of devotion, entering trance-like states where they believed they were possessed by the spirit of Bacchus himself. These experiences were seen as transformative, offering a temporary escape, again, just like the Greek counterpart, from the mundane and the communion with the powerful life-altering forces. The atmosphere was, of course, charged with a sense of liberation and communal ecstasy. This is where it kind of breaks away. Okay? The core is there. And like in the Greek communities, I'd almost say it was more of like a reaffirming connection, right? Like the connection's there and we're just bonding that even more, right?
Yes.
This is all the disenfranchised people of Rome
That's dangerous.
getting together and remembering who put them there.
That's a little
Liberation, not like freedom of my daily bullshit. It's freedom of the daily bullshit.
like all caps.
Right. I'm not saying it didn't happen in Greece. Clearly there's myths that kind of reflect that. But they seem to have a more, I mean, I don't want to say healthy relationship, but like, I guess one that didn't cause the government to fucking worry, I suppose. Right?
Or as much.
As much, right. So at least they made it like official, like, hey, rather than fight it, let's just make this like a fun festival every week, guys.
Let's
Then
make
that
this a
happens.
thing.
Yeah. You know, like a vent. It was a good vent. A state organized vent.
You have to have something like that.
Right. And like Rome really didn't. Because it was all about, like, the patriarchy was hard and horrible and strong, and there was a lot of social injustice in ancient Greece. Athens is portrayed as the home to democracy. Democracy for who? Not if you're foreign. Not if you're a lady. Not if you're a foreign lady. Nope. Not if you poor. At certain points, you couldn't even be poor. You had to be landowning, too. So it was very, very small. And
freedom's for me, but not for thee.
And it was also sometimes conditional because they did at times take it away, expand it and contract it. So, I mean, but there were always certain groups that absolutely never got it.
Yep.
And it didn't matter if you're a woman who, clawed her way to the top and owned her own businesses. Despite everything, you would never get a say. You always had to work through someone else.
Yep.
And if you were a foreigner who, like, really did well, expanded his business, had all the connections to all the highest ranking people in Athens,
Didn't matter.
you and even your children would never get it. Never. You weren't even working for your children at that point.
Nope.
So, like, we have to remember that too. However, in Rome, like in Greece, you were at least sort of allowed to be yourself. You could be a sensitive guy and that was okay. I mean, like within reason, I guess. It was still toxic. But in Rome, they cranked that up to an 11. Like, you could not show weakness. You could not show, like, you couldn't get, a Greek guy getting drunk. That's just a symposia, guys. You got blackout drunk and did some stuff you regret. That's a good story. But, like, in Rome? That was shameful because you in Rome have to always be in control of yourself. Period. Of your emotions. You can't be angry. You can't be sad. You can't be happy. You have to be...
Toxic stoicism.
Stoicism to the extreme. And no, not every Roman clearly didn't do that. But sometimes those ones are usually wrote about pretty harshly.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. It's the ones that never let the mask down.
And that honestly is like a shaken Coke bottle. It will create more and more pressure over time, and you will end up bursting.
Exactly.
In a bad way.
So, with that being said, social hierarchies in these Bacchic rituals seem to melt away as individuals from different backgrounds came together in shared devotion. The wearing of masks further contributed to this temporary suspension of societal norms, again, allowing participants to shed their everyday identities and embrace the wilder aspects of themselves. The sense of freedom and unity was undoubtedly a powerful draw for many, contributing to the rapid spread and increasing popularity of Bacchanalia.
However, this very intensity and secrecy began to raise alarm bells within the Roman establishment. As the scale of the Bacchanalia grew, so too did the rumors and anxieties surrounding it. Whispers circulated about the clandestine nocturnal meetings, the violation of traditional Roman morality, and even the orchestration of political conspiracies under the guise of religious ritual. If you are seeing shadows everywhere, that means you are a bad person. I'm sorry.
I mean, to be fair, they had every right to, because these were actually absolutely happening.
I mean, it was, but at the same time, if you are sitting there, and honestly, this very much reads like the Red Scare. Communists everywhere! Oh my God, the communists are coming to get us.
Like, protect your children. Like, what are your sons doing? Like, there was a lot of that. Yeah.
Where are your children?
Well, there is a lot of that. There's a point where a senator gets very concerned because he does find out that his supposed, like, son, who would never, was at this and actually taking advice and, like, being swayed by the head priestess, a woman telling his son what to do and think, and he was listening to her, and like, oh my God.
Never.
Right.
Would never. So the secrecy surrounding the rites fueled suspicion and fear among the ruling elite. In 186 BC, these anxieties reached a boiling point. The Roman Senate, deeply concerned about the potential for social unrest and the erosion of Roman values, launched a significant investigation into the Bacchanalia. The accounts that emerged, whether entirely accurate or embellished by fear and prejudice, painted a picture of widespread licentiousness, criminal activity, and a dangerous challenge to Roman authority.
We have to kick out these immigrants because they are drug dealers and rapists. And like they are stealing jobs and they're ruining the culture that is America. I mean, of Rome.
Of Rome. I mean.
That's, again, why we have to justify these actions. And you have to do it in a way that's universally, like, everyone would agree is a bad thing. There's no proof of it. It's just, again, who was the winner?
Exactly. Livy, the famous Roman historian, provides a detailed account of the Senate's crackdown, highlighting the perceived threat to the state. The Senate's response was swift and decisive. A decree was issued that severely restricted Bacchanalian practices. Large gatherings were forbidden, and the number of participants was strictly limited. Sounds like COVID, actually.
Sounds like fascism.
It does, very much so. So while the worship of Bacchus wasn't entirely outlawed, recognizing the deep-seated religious sentiments, the wild, ecstatic, and secretive nature of the Bacchanalia was systemically dismantled. The crackdown serves as a stark reminder of the Roman state's commitment to maintaining order and its suspicion of religious practices that seem to operate outside of its control. The suppression of the Bacchanalia marks a significant moment in Roman religious and social history. It highlights the tension between individual religious expression and the authority of the state, and the fear that unregulated enthusiasm could lead to social upheaval. While the vibrant and unrestrained celebrations of the Bacchanalia were curtailed, the underlying human desire for connection, liberation, and perhaps a touch of ecstatic release likely found other avenues of expression within the Roman world.
All right, but that's it for this week. Next time, we will dive into the other mystery cults from ancient Greece and Rome that explore their affiliation with Dionysus. So, now as you know, we are a new podcast and we're always looking to please the dark magic that is the algorithm. So, wherever you are listening to this, whether it be Spotify, Apple, iHeart, or YouTube, if you like us, take the time to give us a positive review. It goes a long way for us.
We will also be starting a Patreon soon, and as soon as we have enough content in the backlog. There you can hear episodes of topics outside of the main purview of the main podcast, create videos or do Q&As, sell merch, and in general, get up to hijinks, so keep your eye out for that. If you have any ideas, comments, or just want to say hi, you can reach us at timetravelersclubpodcast@gmail.com. We love it when people say hi, and as always, thank you for listening.
Bye
for
now.